Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. The famous quote on a plaque on the Statue of Liberty's base is part of a sonnet titled The New Colossus, written by American poet Emma Lazarus. She wrote the poem as part of a fundraising effort. The poem was inspired by her work aiding refugees who had fled anti-Semitic riots taking place in Europe. Its words have come to represent part of the hope that is America. Thank you for joining us. I am your host, Bart Voss. Today's topic, the Statue of Liberty. There are very few symbols as iconic to the United States as the Statue of Liberty. Holding a torch above her head, a tablet that bears the date of the Declaration of Independence, and a shackle and chain at her feet dedicating the recent abolition of slavery in the United States, Lady Liberty has stood on Liberty Island in New York Harbor since her dedication on October 28, 1886. But how did she get there? So, the idea for the statue was originally conceived by Edward Laboulaye, who was the president of the French Anti-Slavery Society. He wanted to honor the United States and the Union Civil War victory and the abolition of slavery. At the time, France was ruled by an oppressive monarchy, and he hoped that it would inspire their own country, France, to democracy. He presented the idea to French sculptor Frederick Bartholdi, and Bartholdi at the time didn't have the capacity to take on the project, so it shelved until June of 1871, when he was on a planned trip to the United States. Bartholdi decided to present the idea to influential Americans, and he happened to gain the ear of President Grant, who said that if the statue was built, the Bedloe Island in New York Harbor, which is now Liberty Island, could be secured for its display. It wasn't until 4 years later in 1875, when political tensions in France had ceased, that fundraising and subsequent construction on the statue began. As part of the beginning of construction, the United States agreed that it would pay for and construct the pedestal that the Statue of Liberty would sit on. Fun note on this part that during the construction of the pedestal, the fundraising efforts in New York ran dry and the state or federal government couldn't get additional funding approved for it. Both the cities of Philadelphia and Boston offered to cover the cost of constructing the pedestal if they would agree to relocate the statue to their cities. It was Joseph Pulitzer who saved the day and ran a fundraising campaign in his newspaper, the New York World, which raised the needed money to finish the construction. So that's just a crazy side fact to me that we almost had the Statue of Liberty in Boston or the Statue of Liberty in Philadelphia instead of New York. But Pulitzer saved the day. Statue of Liberty is where it stands. The construction, though, back to it, when it was going on in France, was created using an iron frame to support the external shell of the statue, which was crafted of copper. It took roughly 200,000 pounds of copper to create, and she was modeled after the Roman liberty goddess named Libertas. The height of the statue when constructed is 151 feet, and pedestal to base, the Statue of Liberty is 305 feet. Construction ran on the statue in France from 1876 to 1884 to complete that work before it was then disassembled and shipped to the United States for reassembly. It arrived in New York Harbor in June of 1885. However, construction wasn't yet complete on the pedestal, and that wasn't completed actually until of April of 1886. So it wasn't until the next year until the United States completed the pedestal. Finally, in October of 1886, the pedestal is complete, the statue is constructed, and the United States is ready to dedicate it. President Grover Cleveland, who was the former governor of New York, was the master of ceremonies. The morning of the dedication parade, there was a parade held in the streets of New York, and attendance for this parade was estimated to be up to 1 million people. On the parade route, they went by the New York Stock Exchange, and the members of the stock exchange threw ticker tape out the windows. And fun side fact, this is where the term ticker tape parade originated from, was the dedication of the Statue of Liberty. President Cleveland then boarded a nautical parade out to the island where a formal dedication was held for the statue, formally named Liberty Enlightening the World. The night of the dedication, the torch was then lit for the very first time. And unfortunately, this was a little womp womp. It was underwhelming. The light could barely be seen from shore, and the statue was basically invisible at night. It wasn't until 1960 when Ralph Pulitzer raised the money to have a lighting system installed to illuminate the statue at night. At this time, this torch was also redesigned to replace some of the copper with stained glass to make the torch itself more visible at night. Fun fact on the torch, in 1982, when a renovation of the statue was taking place, the original torch had been so badly damaged by years of leaking from this stained glass that a replica torch had to be installed. So the original torch is now on display in a museum on the island, and it's a replica that's actually on the statue. At any rate, it wasn't until 1957 that the statue had a lighting system that was on around the clock so that you could see it at night. When the statue was originally constructed, though, it was a dull copper color. By 1900, after the statue had been dedicated, a green patina called videgris, which was caused by copper oxidation, began to spread on the statue, and 6 years later, in 1906, it had covered the entire statue. It was initially believed that there was corrosion taking place, and Congress authorized funds to have it removed and the statue repainted. The general public, though, actually liked the green color from the oxidation, and after an Army Corps of Engineers study, they were able to determine that the oxidation actually helped protect the skin of the statue rather than weaken it, and the external color was left, leaving us with the statue that we see and know to this day. Changing gears, though, the statue has a unique military history that I was unaware of until I started preparing this episode. And from 1818 to 1933, the island was actually controlled by the military, and military police and their families were stationed on the island. There were stories I was able to find of kids that were nicknamed the Liberty Island Kids who grew up and lived on the island. And there's some fun stories about them shooting bottle rockets at the statue on the 4th of July. Or another one I saw was the siblings had climbed to the top and were dropping balls out of the statue's crown to see how high they would bounce when they hit the ground. And I can just remember doing stupid stuff like this as a kid. There's an observation at a local state park here near where I live, and we would drop 20-ounce bottles of pop off them just to see it explode when it would hit the ground. I can't imagine growing up on Liberty Island with the Statue of Liberty and thinking of just the dumb stuff I would have done as a kid in that environment. But there are just some really neat stories about these Liberty Island kids. Moving forward, though, was in 1924 when President Coolidge finally had it declared a national monument. In 1933, this is when the military control ended and the island was turned into a national park, and it has remained under that jurisdiction since then. It was in 1956 when the island's name was officially changed from Bedloe Island to Liberty Island, which we know it today. Aside from the military families living on the island, though, the island still did house a resident all the way up until 2012. Under the National Parks jurisdiction, a park ranger was assigned to the island and lived in a small brick house on the opposite island from the statue. When 2012, the Hurricane Sandy, badly damaged that house, though, and there hasn't been a resident on the island since then. Aside from everything else, going from military to national parks to everything, the statue does have one other designation that was bestowed upon it in 1945, and that was when it was recognized as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. And being a national park and being recognized by UNESCO is how we know it to today. As we wrap up, though, I want to end where we began, and there's the quote on the base of the Statue of Liberty that's just a piece of the full poem, The New Colossus, that was written by Emma Lazarus, as I had said. I just want to read that full poem to you to close out the episode today. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land, here at our sea-washed sunset gate shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beaconed hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that the twin cities frame. Keep ancient lands, you storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuge of your teeming shores. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. That's all for today. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, I am your host, Bart Voss, and today's topic has been the Statue of Liberty.